The morning news blurred into the background, just another routine day, until the camera panned to a reporter at a rally in New York City. There he was, my husband, smack in the middle of the crowd, grinning under a banner of lies. Mark kissed me goodbye, suitcase in hand, reassuring me he'd be back by the weekend. His work trips were routine, leaving me unbothered by these fleeting absences. But one night, a notification on my phone shattered that calm. News footage showed Mark, unmistakably, amidst chaos in a distant city. This place he'd never spoken of, these secrets unveiled in an instant, toppled the trust I'd held dear. Memories and whispered promises swirled aimlessly, leaving me wondering how everything evolved into this eerie, uncharted territory. Doubt, uninvited, crept into my heart in place of the honesty I'd once believed unshakable. Why was Mark there, living another life in a town unknown to me, hiding behind the facade he had so carefully constructed? The evening light barely penetrated the room, its weak glow casting skewed shadows across the walls as if mocking the stability I'd thought I had. I sat there, rooted to the chair, a disbelieving statue. Still warm was the place where he should have been, where countless nights he had rested beside me without a sign, not a single tremor hinting at the avalanche he'd set in motion. The news anchor's voice blared in the eerie silence. My ears echoed with her words, each one a hammer against my skull, each syllable unforgiving and relentless. Mark Anderson, involved in fraudulent schemes. Her voice, clipped, formal, yet carrying the weight of my unraveling world. I replayed the clip over and over, my thumb working the remote with a rhythmic, compulsive precision. Rewind, replay, rewind, replay, a dull metronome marking the destruction of trust. My tongue lay heavy in my mouth, coated with the acid taste of betrayal. It felt almost like a ritual, this obsessive cycling, as if repetition could somehow alter reality. I found myself hoping, absurdly, that my eyes would tire before my heart gave in. His absence felt like a cavern opening inside me, a maw where certainty had once been, now festering with unanswerable whys. The air around me grew colder, the weight of reality pressing down like an unseen hand squeezing the oxygen from the room. And yet, I couldn't move, trapped in this maelstrom of disbelief, this suffocating paradox where running wouldn't allow escape, but still felt like an unattainable salvation. The minutes stretched into hours, my mind fraying at the edges, consumed by nagging doubts and insidious whispers. Could I have known? What signs did I ignore? These questions scuttled across my consciousness like roaches, refusing to be swatted away by the flimsy defenses of past assurances. When finally, morning dared to spill through the curtains, it brought no relief. Instead of softening the night's harsh edges, the light only magnified them. I was more awake, yet somehow more lost, pinned deep into a maze of unanswered questions and unseen corners. The house around me, once a fortress, now loomed with sinister silence, complicit in its stillness. I had to know. I needed answers with a desperation that clawed at my chest, threatening to erupt from my skin with each unsteady breath. There was no choice but to confront this chasm head-on, to dive into the deception and see what lay beneath the shattered surface. I rose, finally breaking free from the chair's grasp, though my body screamed in protest at the abrupt movement. Every muscle was an anchor, dragging me toward the gravity of dread standing before me like a locked door. Yet, the need for clarity, for understanding, was too raw, too present to be ignored. Equipped only with the fragments of truth and a simmering resolve born from the ashes of betrayal, I prepared to step into the chaos. Each bubble bursting in the pan mirrored my own fragile illusion, a facade of domesticity shattering in the glow of dawn. The kitchen was bathed in that uncanny green morning light, the kind that made everything look like a faded picture from the past. I gripped the edge of the counter, felt the coolness of the marble seep into my skin, as if it could tether me back to reality. Crack! The egg broke too easily in my hand, yolk oozing between my fingers. I cursed under my breath, a soft, almost inaudible sound that vanished into the persistent sizzle of the frying pan. But it wasn't the mess that rattled me. It was the tremor, the rogue quiver in my fingertips that betrayed an inner earthquake I couldn't control. The air was heavy with the aroma of coffee, thick and almost suffocating, mingling with the grease and silence. This room, usually my sanctuary at such an early hour, felt alien, invaded by invisible questions darting around like shadows, refusing to settle. I tried to tune them out, focused on the rhythm of my movements, stir, pour, crack, hoping the repetition could hypnotize the chaos into submission. But nothing worked. I could feel my breath hitching in uneven gasps, chest tightening as if squeezed by an unseen hand. Why hadn't I noticed before? The cracks in my life appeared as vividly as the lines etched across my palm. The thought festered like a wound that wouldn't heal, the knowledge of deceit sitting heavy in my belly, a leaden weight that wouldn't let go. I leaned against the counter, half conscious of the cold, hard edge pressing into my spine. I watched the clock, its minute hand crawling mercilessly forward. Time was moving, but I was stuck, ensnared in this moment, every tick echoing the question that had been haunting me. Why? Why the secrets? And what would I do if? I shook my head, scattering the unformed thought like dust. The sounds around me, the low hum of the refrigerator, the distant chirp of birds waking today, were painfully normal. The world outside continued its indifferent cycle, while inside, my reality splintered further with each passing second. A strand of hair fell into my face, and I brushed it away with trembling fingers, trying to add a dollop of urgency to my numb resolve. I would find answers today, I promised myself. They wouldn't elude me any longer. The reassurance was as fragile as the shells I'd been cracking, but it was all I had to cling to. The sun, now fully risen, cast sharp lines across the floor, drawing patterns that pulsed like a countdown. And as the light grew stronger, so too did an uncontrollable urge for clarity, seeping in with the dawn, warm, relentless, and impossible to ignore. The receiver clicks into place with a hollow finality as I sit there, rehearsing the words over and over in my head. A deep breath, a moment of stillness, then finally the call connects. My throat is dry as I hear the muted hum of background office chatter through the line. My voice trembles slightly, a forced veneer of stability. Hi, I'm trying to reach Mark. Is he available? The pause is long enough to terrify me. The assistant's voice, when it comes, is polite but evasive, dipped in the kind of careful neutrality that makes my skin prickle. I'm sorry, Mark isn't in the office this week. Would you like to leave a message? My heart sinks while my mind scrambles, piecing together the timeline of our conversations, the late nights he claimed were spent at the office. On leave. I repeat, trying to keep my tone casual, fighting the tightening in my chest. That's surprising. There's a rustle of papers, or maybe it's just the shuffle of my own thoughts, trying to slot this new piece of puzzling information into the framework of our life. Yes, she says, conversational, as if sharing the mildest news. He'll be back next week. The words twist in my stomach like sour milk, thickening with every unchanged, rerun memory. Each night he stayed late at work, the scent of unfamiliar perfume lingering faintly when he finally came home. Emotions leered dangerously close to the surface. Betrayals I hadn't given permission to exist lurch into clarity, and suddenly I'm cold despite the August sun streaming through the window. Politeness propels some noises from my lips, an awkward, automated gratitude before I end the call. Sitting in the rigid stillness of an afternoon that feels newly foreign, the relief I wanted has dissolved into something acrid, turning my veins to ice. I stare at the phone, hoping it will explain what deceit has crept so insidiously into my life without my sanction. My hands tremble as I tighten their grasp around it, deciphering the familiar digits of the number I know too well. There's no denying what I now sense, an unyielding truth that feels like a physical force boxing me in. It wasn't work. It wasn't some late-night project swallowing his attention. No, this is the undeniable snarl of lies and half-truths, constructing some life-size fabrication apart from the shared life I thought we had. Each breath feels unsteady, as if the consistency of air has altered, shrinking to something shallow and insufficient. A confrontation looms, shadowy but insistent, as inevitable as the strangling need for air. I close my eyes, jaw set tightly against the coming onslaught of shared words and accusations, desperately wishing that clarity didn't feel so much like a severing. But there's no turning away now, no veil behind which to hide the gaping emptiness left in the wake of his deceit. The hallway stretches before me, a somber passage of faded light, and shadowed corners. My slippers drag across the hardwood floor, each step a hesitant whisper. The house feels different now, as if the walls have absorbed the weight of an unspoken tension. Once, this place resonated with laughter and life. I see it in the chip on the doorframe where we marked the kids' growth, hear it in the distant echo of a forgotten song hum from the bedroom. Now, it feels like the walls are inching closer, ready to reveal secrets in the very air I breathe. I clutch my phone, the cold plastic a lifeline and a shackle. I open and close the messages, drafting lines that go unsent, words of confrontation that I retract with a swipe. What do I write that doesn't betray the turmoil inside me? Each draft circles back to the same stinging question and accusation I can't quite voice. My thumb hovers over the call button, a tightrope act between connection and confession, but fear paralyzes it there. Silence is a presence here, palpable in the absence of the evening's symphony of clattering dishes and children's chatter. My thoughts, usually a comforting hum of plans and chores, now swirl with suspicions, fleshed out in vivid, derailing mental images. Why haven't they called back? What are they hiding? The clock ticks with infuriating patience, while I am a coil wound too tightly, ready to snap back at the slightest provocation. I strain to hear any sign, my ear tuned to the smallest stir from outside, a car slowing, footsteps approaching the porch. Shadows stretch along the wall, as hours slip by unseen. The weight of possibility, of deceit, presses against my chest, each breath a reminder of this growing isolation. But beneath the anxiety, a new sensation stirs. Slowly, anxiety crystallizes into something firmer, an iron core forming within the fog of my doubts. I realize I can't continue to exist in this purgatory of half-truths and unknowns. My solitude, once a careful arrangement of cherished routines, now feels like betrayal. There comes a resolute clarity that emerges within the dim confines of this hallway. I need answers to silence this cacophony inside my head. The call still unsent. I let my thumb rest over the phone, feeling a resolve akin to armor. Movement becomes intention as I start towards the front door, the darkness behind me no match for the light I'm desperate to find. I open the door, the air cool and laden with the scent of wet earth, heavy with promise or penance. For now, it's just me and the silence. The quiet wraps around me like a thick shroud as I move through the house, each step a deliberate test of faith against the hardwood floors that seem to echo my doubts. My heart beats louder than ever in this stillness. There's a change in the air, something heavy that sits on my chest, and I realize I can't just sit and pretend anymore. I have to know what's lingering beneath the surface of our polished life, beneath Mark's polished words. My hand schemes the cool banister as I make my way to his study, a place I seldom enter alone. The door creaks as I push it open, and the room greets me, an untouched museum of his meticulous order. Papers are aligned with the precision of a ruler. Pens are neatly corralled in a sleek holder. It's as if nothing ever happens here, this sanctuary for his thoughts and secrets. But then, out of all the order, something beckons my eye, a single framed photo on his desk. Our photo. It's tilted, slightly off-kilter. The small imperfection might have seemed spontaneous or accidental to anyone else. Yet here, in the clinical orderliness of Mark's space, it screams of incongruence, of something unaccounted for. Our smiles, captured behind glass, seem to challenge me with their gleaming, unblemished facade. The bright light in our eyes glows with a dissonance, a cruel mimicry of contentment that snarls just beneath the surface. The frame's angles too. It tugs at the edges of my idealized perception. Perfect has lost its gloss, the lie louder than the silence echoes. I move closer, the floorboards giving way to my presence, each creak a reluctant acknowledgement of my trespass. My fingers trace the edges of the frame, as if touching the worn wood could uncover layers hidden from sight, prove they existed at all. The glass feels cool, as if it held the chill of its contents. Smiles forged in an ancient summer that no longer warms us. Why now? I murmur into the emptiness that refuses to answer. His secrets ponder in the folds of silence, behind the paperweight of our commitments, solid yet unbearably delicate. I set the frame back down, aligned perfectly with an imaginary line only my mind perceives. but the weight of what it represents, this thin veneer, fractured by a skewed picture, presses back harder. He keeps this slice of truth tucked away, boxed in with neatness, the pretension of happiness under pressure, waiting to crack. I see it now, the cruelty of sharp edges feigning seamlessness. My fingers curl into my palm, a fist, and I breathe out, tracing my steps back. Leaving the study offers no relief, only more silence. But it's a silence I've begun to decipher, a silent promise between us, that what goes unsaid still has the sharpness to cut. The phone weighed heavily in my hand as I hovered over the contact list, scrolling past names that now felt like strangers in a suddenly unraveling world. His name was Carl, some distant presence always mentioned in vague, fleeting conversations with Mark. His composed demeanor had whispered of trustworthiness through the chaotic chatter of corporate functions. Could I trust him now, when trust felt like a vanishing mirage? The dial tone hummed in my ear, filling the room with its insistent repetition until a hesitant click echoed back. Carl? It's Mark's wife, I said, the sudden formality feeling foreign on my tongue. How strange it was to sense a tremor of familiarity with an almost stranger. The line crackled, then his voice, steady yet surprised, responded. Oh, hi. This is unexpected. Beneath my calm mask, emotions seethed, a storm barely holding its position along the horizon. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important, but I wanted to ask you about Mark's recent trips, just to make sure everything's okay. You know how it is with these constant travels. A pause held space between us, the quiet stretching into shadows. Yeah, I know how it is, he finally replied, his breath suspended in a whisper that seemed to carry more weight than his words. I listened, the silence revealing its own story. I've just been a bit worried. His stories don't always seem to align, I admitted, the confessions slipping faster than intentions. Would Carl hear the desperation cloaked beneath each syllable, the tightening threads of anguish weaving through my questions? I understand, Carl spoke, his voice a cautious bridge over my welling uncertainty. Could he hear it? That quiver of dread seeping into sincerity? Mark's been talking about taking a step back, spending more time at home. Is that part of what's concerning you? I clenched my lip, waiting for a shred of truth to cut through his well-meaning deflections, hoping against hope for an ally in his voice. He hasn't mentioned anything like that to me. My throat clenched briefly, a fissure in my preparedness. It ached to ask directly, to break these polished veneers. And then his words carried the quiet pang of honesty. He seemed troubled last time we spoke, like he was wrestling with something. But you know, he's not said much more than that. The implication wrapped around me like a shiver-inducing draft. Everything swelled with ambiguity, like pieces of a puzzle that constantly reconfigured, leaving no clear picture. Each revelation or lack thereof was another challenge, feeding speculation with fuel that simmered too close to the breaking point. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate you being candid, I murmured, trying to stifle the swell of conflicting emotions, searching yet again for air in a room filled with doubt. Of course, came Carl's reply, hesitation casting a subtle shadow. Let me know if there's anything else I can help with. As the call ended, I sat, clutching the phone with both hands. My thoughts tumbled, uncertain whether Carl's words had provided more clarity or bewilderment. With the screen's cold glow painting my face, I sit in the darkness, hunched over like a detective piecing together the fragments of a shattered truth. My heart pounds like a drum, steady, relentless as I dive into Mark's digital world. Every click is a step into the abyss, where shadows stretch long and deep. I find myself scanning through old emails, each revealing something new, yet everything feels interminably hollow. The cursor blinks, taunting, waiting for me to unearth the last secret. Scrolling, searching, I stumble on a thread buried under banal exchanges, discount codes, reminders, bills. My breath catches. There it is. A name I don't recognize. A woman. From Dallas. I click into her world, intrusive yet desperate, a voyeur to my crumbling life. Her words, intimate and unguarded, leap off the screen. Each sentence slicing through the veneer Mark had so carefully painted over our life together. Reading her emails feels like standing on the brink of understanding and disbelief, the ground beneath shifting, treacherous. Her name, Emma, repeats like a soft chant in the threads, her messages tender, raw, distinctly for him. For Mark. A life I wasn't a part of, etched in digital ink. My hands tremble, and I clench them into fists, the pressure driving my nails into my palms, trying to ground the fury that's seething, simmering. The sentences are short, sweet, echoing of a relationship not clothed in deceit, at least on her end. That realization twists the knife deeper. I can't wait to hold you again, reads one, simple yet murderous. I imagine her, unaware, innocent in her complicity of stealing someone who should have been irremovably mine. A splintering cry lodges in my throat as I read on. Details of their last meeting, the warmth she felt in his arms, the way she cherished moments stolen from me. She uses words like love, home, things he used to say to me. Each phrase is a betrayal carved in stone, an epitaph for the life I thought we were building together. My resolve hardens around the chaos wreathing my heart. These aren't just emails. They are daggers of reality, piercing through any delusion I might have clung to. I cannot unsee this. I cannot pretend it isn't true. The weight of it presses on my chest, and I struggle to breathe. Fury becomes my fuel, liquid fire coursing through veins turned icy, igniting something primal. Each word she's typed pulls taut the strings of my patience, left me like a puppet with a will to cut itself free. I think of Mark, wherever he is, blissfully ignorant of my discovery, the truth. There's no room for hesitation anymore. This is not the life I consented to, not the partner I believed him to be. The reality is raw, unhealed, and only one path remains. I must confront Mark. No more illusions, no more waiting, no more lies. The truth demands to be heard, and I am ready to deliver it. The front door creaked open like an unwelcome visitor, and my heart, though armored with defiance, stuttered. Mark stepped inside, the air between us already thick with the words unsaid, words that strung us in this harrowing dance of deception. His face was a mask, a practiced blend of indifference and affable weariness, as if he hadn't already ripped through every tender thread of our life. I stood rooted in the hallway, clutching the edge of the counter. My nails, half-moons of tension, bit into the wood as I drank in his presence, that infuriating casualness of his movements. Silence hovered like a specter, a witness to our crumbling facade. "Hey," he said, setting his briefcase down with a slap too loud, bursting the bubble of silence between us. The word fell flat, a travesty of normalcy. "Hey." My voice splintered, sharp and frayed. I could barely recognize it as my own. Every syllable dripped with the bile of betrayal as I prepared to dismantle the closure he so desperately clung to. My eyes locked onto his, searching for something, anything, that indicated a crack in his armor. But there were only walls, smooth and impenetrable. He walked into the living room, shrugging off his jacket with meticulous care, each fold and crease measured, ignoring the storm looming. "How was your day?" he asked, and that was it. The absurdity bubbled up inside me, hot and fierce. It broke like a wave, and suddenly I was shouting, the words crashing out, each one sharper, colder. "How dare you?" He turned, his face falling into stillness, the perfect portrait of confusion and innocence. "What are you talking about?" "Don't." I flung the word at him, an accusation wrapped in steel. "Don't pretend. Don't stand there and act like you haven't torn us apart." His silence was a bitter echo against my voice, a catalyst that spurred me forward. "You knew," I pressed on. "You knew and kept lying, kept feeding me these endless stories." He opened his mouth, a warning, a denial formulating on his lips, but I was unstoppable, each revelation regarding that beautiful lie we lived in. "I gave you everything, every bit of myself, and for what? For this silence, this pretense." Emotion tangled with my thoughts, my heart a cacophony of questions I dared not voice. The world spun in a dizzying blur of anguish, and tears traced icy trails down my cheeks, suddenly realized when the air scraped raw against my skin. He took a step forward, hand extended, a gesture of incongruous comfort. "It's not what you think," he murmured, the words a ghost of sincerity. I laughed, a sound so foreign and broken it jarred me. "Then tell me," I said, barely a whisper now. "Tell me what it is." In the trailing silence, I felt the fracture open wider. His hesitation spoke volumes as the chasm between truth and lies swallowed us whole, and I stood there, waiting for an answer I knew would never come. The room felt small, like the walls were closing in with every word we hurled at each other. I could barely stand the sight of him, Mark, the man I had once promised forever to, now a stranger shuffling around aimlessly within our crumbling dreams. You never listen. His voice was taut like a pulled wire, snapping against the silence that had settled too long between us. His eyes mirrored mine, twin pools of desperation and anger, struggling in the confines of what was crumbling away. You've stopped caring about us. Caring. My response, a lance through the fog of his accusations, sharp enough to pierce, but unable to cut away the real issue. I begged you to talk to me. Months, years of asking for a conversation, but you'd rather lose yourself in your work. Mark turned away, his shoulders a weary silhouette against the muted light seeping through the blinds. He ran a hand through his hair, still silent, avoiding the wreckage of years strewn between us. I'm working for us, to make things better. Liar. The word reverberated in my mind, a bitter truth I could never utter aloud without crumbling myself. Instead, I stood rooted by his excuses, the hollow thud of disappointment echoing in my chest. Time crawled forward, dragging with it the realization, slow and unstoppable, like an impending avalanche. It had been years, too many fights ending the same. No resolution, just the slamming of doors and icy nights where his absence became presence stronger than his touch. My mind drifted, imagining words he'd say to finally unravel us, to rectify this mess we'd made. But they never came. Instead, we remained, stranded among reminders of what we once were and what we'd lost. The words I thought he'd say didn't come. Instead, we stood amid the jagged shards of our shared life, echoes of something painfully irreparable resounding between us. Everything we'd built was scattered, remnants of a time when love was our only foundation. Now, it was a threshold we couldn't seem to cross, a chasm of unmet expectations and unspoken regrets. My chest felt hollow, a cavern of emotions collapsing inward. A resigned exhale parted my lips, every bitter inhale a reminder of dreams deferred, love withheld, futures unimagined. I glanced at Mark, searching for anything left. Any reason to believe his words could bridge the void or soothe the fracture laying bare beneath us. But no light flickered in his eyes, and I found only reflections of my own acceptance. Silence, thick and heavy, fell like curtains over our stage, leaving us with nothing but the aching quiet of what we would never be again. In that quiet, I understood what lay ahead, felt the gentle nudge of inevitability settling us into new roles, separate paths weaving away into darkness. The light of dawn creeps across the room, indifferent and serene, as I sit by the window beneath the blanket of my own thoughts. Yet again, it feels like the universe conspired to orchestrate this scene, the chill in the air mirrored by the emptiness inside. The phantom of loss drapes over me like a familiar, unwelcome companion, settling heavily on my shoulders. It's a weight that's been growing roots for days now, invading the spaces between breaths, wedging itself into every thought. Outside, the world is waking, casting off its nighttime cloak. But here, my world remains suspended, trapped in an eternal, muted twilight. I sit in this silence, where even my heartbeat is a distant, reluctant echo. Faces beyond the window blur into each other, shadows of what once was certain in my life, and I wonder what kind of person I am to dread such uncertainty. Whispers of the future flutter through my mind, like echoes in a cathedral devoid of faith. There was a time when everything seemed mapped out perfectly, every step plotted, every horizon clear and definite. I can almost see those moments flicker in the periphery, the certainty now just a distant mirage taunting me with its memory. Yet, in this quiet ruin, there's an unexpected clarity. The warmth of acceptance begins its slow crawl against the frost of betrayal. The subtle hue of possibilities peeks over the edge of this dawn, teasing a promise buried in the chaos. As the horizon breathes its cold light over scattered remnants of shattered trust, a seed of resolve begins to sprout. In the fracture lines of my heart, there's an awakening. Maybe, just maybe, solitude isn't the barren wasteland I've feared. Perhaps it's fertile soil, waiting for something yet unnamed to take root and grow. Reclaiming my narrative from the clutches of betrayal feels daunting, but not impossible. It's the potential for a new tapestry woven from these broken threads, one that could hold something beautiful and uncharted. I draw a breath, long and deliberate, letting the crisp morning air fill my lungs. It's an action that feels both ordinary and monumental, a single act of defiance against the current of despair. A promise to myself, to rise from the ashes of broken trust, to craft resolve in place of ruin, to claim this moment as the start of an unspoken chapter. There is power in that silence, a rhythm in those gentle breaths that promises a new dawn. The specter of grief naively assumes permanence, but life, in its quiet insistence, whispers otherwise. I sit alone, yes, but that solitude is an invitation, not a condemnation. It challenges me to envision a future not as it should be, but as it could become. With each exhaled breath, uncertainty remains, yet with it, a fragile, glistening thread of hope.